It was supposed to be just another uneventful night. I had been working the graveyard shift for the past 2 years in this sleepy little town, and I was used to the quiet, slow nights with nothing but the hum of the radio to keep me company. But that night was different. I was on patrol, driving down the empty streets, when a call came through the radio. Unit 32, we've got a possible 10 to 50. Suspected vehicle fleeing the scene on 3rd and Oak. Can you check it out? I didn't think much of it at first. Fleeing vehicles weren't rare, mostly drunk drivers or speeders. But the urgency in the dispatcher's voice sent a chill down my spine. I hit the gas, turning onto 3rd Street, my headlights slicing through the darkness. As I rounded the corner, my headlights caught something that made my stomach lurch. A black SUV, parked by the curb, engine running. There was no other vehicle in sight, no sign of anyone fleeing. The SUV was too still, too quiet. I pulled up beside it, flicking on my lights, scanning the interior with my flashlight. Empty. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. It didn't make sense. The dispatcher had said it was fleeing, but this car wasn't going anywhere. I called in. Unit 32, I've got the vehicle at 3rd and Oak. No sign of anyone inside. No response. I checked the back of the SUV. There, on the passenger seat, was a small, unmarked envelope. It was bizarre, there was something off about it, like it didn't belong. I glanced around again, feeling a growing unease. Something wasn't right, but I couldn't put my finger on it. I reached for the envelope. And that's when I heard it. A voice, faint and soft, whispering from the darkness, "Get out of the car." I froze. It sounded like it was coming from right behind me. I jerked my head around, heart pounding in my chest. The street was empty. Nothing but the silent night air. The only sound was the faint rustling of leaves from a nearby tree. I looked back at the SUV, still unnervingly still, the envelope still sitting on the passenger seat like it was waiting for me. "Get out of the car." The voice came again, this time louder, closer. I couldn't move. My hands were gripped tight on the steering wheel, and for a moment, I thought I might be imagining things. I was exhausted, maybe hearing things. But the voice wasn't from the radio, it wasn't from the dispatcher. It was real. I slowly reached for the door, fingers shaking, forcing myself to breathe. As I stepped out, I scanned the area once more, nothing. Just the faint glow from the street lamp, casting long shadows across the pavement. My flashlight flickered as I shined it down the street. There was no one in sight. I moved toward the SUV. The eerie silence was suffocating. The night felt like it had thickened, pressing down on me. I opened the door slowly, carefully, half expecting something, or someone, to jump out at me. But there was nothing. Just the empty car, the envelope, and the smell of something faintly metallic in the air. The envelope caught my attention again. I pulled it out of the seat, fingers trembling as I broke the seal. Inside, there was a single piece of paper. I unfolded it, expecting a warning or a note, maybe a message from someone who had been watching me. What I saw, though, made my blood run cold. It was a picture of me. A clear shot of me sitting in my patrol car, from a distance, as I had been earlier that night, parked in front of the station. Someone had been watching me. The note underneath read, "I'm closer than you think." I turned quickly, scanning the shadows again. My breath came faster now. Someone had been stalking me. The weight of it hit me all at once. And that's when I saw it. A figure, standing at the end of the street, in the darkness. My breath hitched in my throat as I stared at the silhouette at the end of the street. The figure stood perfectly still, like a statue, barely visible in the dim light. I couldn't make out any details, just a shadow, tall and unmoving. My heart thudded in my chest, and my legs felt like they were made of lead. I should have called for backup. I should have driven away, but I was frozen, transfixed by the figure. "Who's there?" My voice came out weak, barely above a whisper. The figure didn't move, didn't respond. I gripped my radio, but the silence made me hesitate. My hand hovered over the mic. I should call for backup, but something stopped me. It felt wrong, like if I spoke, I would break the spell and alert whatever was out there to my presence. I had to get closer. I had to see what it was. I cautiously stepped forward, the gravel crunching under my boots. The figure didn't budge, just stood there in the same spot. The street seemed even quieter now, the air thick with tension. Each step felt like it was taking me further into something I wasn't prepared for, something I wasn't supposed to uncover. When I was about 20 feet away, the figure finally moved. But it wasn't a step forward, it was a tilt of the head, just enough to let me see the glint of something dark in its eyes. That's when I knew it wasn't human. The eyes, those were not eyes of someone who was alive. My blood ran cold. A wave of nausea hit me as I stumbled back, my hand reaching for my gun, my heart racing as panic set in. The figure took a slow, deliberate step toward me, and that's when I noticed it. There was no sound, no footsteps. It moved like it was gliding, its dark form seeming to dissolve into the shadows as it came closer. I raised my gun, my hands shaking so badly that I could barely aim. The figure stopped again, just out of reach. I held my breath, staring at it, willing myself not to blink. I couldn't look away. And then, in a voice that sent chills down my spine, it whispered, "You should have stayed in the car." Before I could react, the figure lunged at me, and everything went black. I don't know how long I was out. When I came to, the world was spinning, and the taste of iron was in my mouth. My head throbbed like a drumbeat, and I struggled to open my eyes. My body felt heavy, like I was weighed down by something unseen. The first thing I noticed when I managed to focus was that I wasn't in my patrol car anymore. I was lying on a cold, hard floor, darkness surrounding me. I could barely make out the outline of what looked like a small, abandoned building. The air smelled stale, like mold and rot. I tried to sit up, but my hands were bound, wrists tight behind my back. Panic surged through me, but I forced myself to stay calm. The last thing I remembered was the figure, the way it had lunged toward me. My gun. I reached for it, only to realize it was gone. Shoo, I froze. The whisper was faint, but unmistakable. It came from somewhere nearby, somewhere I couldn't see. My heart pounded harder now, my breath coming in shallow gasps. I strained my ears, listening, trying to pinpoint where the sound was coming from. The voice wasn't threatening, it was soothing, almost comforting, but there was something about it that made my skin crawl. I heard footsteps. Slow, deliberate. Someone, or something, was walking closer. I struggled against the ropes, my hands raw, but I couldn't break free. The footstep stopped just in front of me. I could feel its presence, close enough to touch. And then, that same whisper again. "You're not ready to see the truth." My throat tightened, and my mind raced. What truth? What did this thing want from me? My pulse hammered in my ears, but the voice had a strange calmness to it, as if it had been expecting me. Waiting for me. A cold breeze swept across the room, sending a chill through my spine. The darkness seemed to shift, almost as if it were alive, pulsing around me. I opened my mouth to scream for help, but no sound came out. Shoo, the voice was closer now. Too close. A hand rested lightly on my shoulder, cold as ice. The room around me seemed to shift, and I could feel my mind starting to unravel. I knew I wasn't supposed to be here. That whatever was standing next to me had no business with me, that it wasn't human, wasn't anything I understood. And then I heard it. A sound, something I had been dreading. A low, guttural growl, reverberating from deep within the shadows. It was closer than I thought. The growl vibrated through the air, a deep, guttural sound that felt like it was coming from the very walls themselves. I couldn't move. My heart was pounding in my chest, so loud I thought it might burst through my ribs. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of what was happening. The hand on my shoulder was like ice, and it gripped me tighter, sending a shock of panic through me. I opened my mouth to scream, but again, no sound came out. My breath was shallow, and I could taste the panic, bitter and sour on my tongue. My eyes darted around the dark room, trying to make sense of what I couldn't see. But there was nothing, just the oppressive darkness pressing in on all sides, making it impossible to tell where the figure was. Then, the growl came again. Louder this time, and closer. It was so low, so animalistic, that I could feel it in my bones. I could hear it, but I couldn't place it. My mind couldn't make sense of the sound, but every instinct in my body screamed at me that I was in danger, real, imminent danger. I struggled against my restraints, the ropes biting into my skin, but they held firm. The hand on my shoulder tightened, and I felt a pressure, like a weight bearing down on me. I wanted to look behind me, to see what was there, but I couldn't move. I was trapped. "Don't look," the whisper came again, soft and insistent. "You're not ready." I felt the temperature drop even further. It was as if the air itself was becoming thick with something, darkness, fear, something suffocating. The growl rumbled once more, so close now that it seemed to fill the space around me. I felt the presence of something larger than life, something predatory, looming over me. And then, a voice. Clear. No longer a whisper, but full of malice and authority. "You shouldn't have seen this." Before I could react, a sharp pain shot through my side, like something had dug into me, its sharp edge cutting through flesh. I gasped, the pain taking my breath away. My body went cold with shock, but I fought to keep my focus. I couldn't lose consciousness. Not yet. I had to stay awake, stay alert. The thing behind me laughed. A cruel, distorted sound. It wasn't human, it was a mockery of something that once might have been human, but was now twisted into something dark. It was toying with me. Playing with me. But why? My eyes locked onto the shadows in front of me, the air around me thickening like a fog. I realized something, this wasn't just a nightmare. This was real. Then, it spoke again, the voice echoing in my mind, "You know what we do to those who see too much." I shuddered. My blood ran cold. The darkness seemed to press in closer, and for the first time in my life, I understood the true meaning of fear. The pain in my side was unbearable, but I fought to keep my eyes open, to stay conscious. My breathing was ragged, but somehow I managed to focus. The shadows around me felt like they were alive, shifting and breathing as if they were waiting for something, waiting for me to succumb, to give in. I had no idea what was happening. Who, or what, was in this room with me? The hand on my shoulder had not moved. The pressure was suffocating, and I could feel its coldness seeping through my uniform like ice. Every nerve in my body screamed at me to break free, to escape, but the ropes held me firmly in place, as though they were part of the darkness itself, part of whatever force had me trapped. Then came the voice again, closer this time, as if the figure was leaning in, its presence overwhelming everything around me. "You really shouldn't have seen it." It sounded almost disappointed, as if it were scolding me. The words were cold, detached. I could hear the slight rasp in its voice, like it had been speaking for a long time, but I couldn't process what it meant. What it meant. I'm just a cop," I managed to croak. My voice was barely a whisper, but I had to speak. I had to try to make sense of this. "I don't know what you want from me," a sound, no, a laugh, echoed through the room, low and mocking. "You don't understand, do you?" it said, its voice a mix of amusement and cruelty. "You're not the first, and you won't be the last. But you saw. You saw too much." The growl rumbled again, but it was different this time. It wasn't just a growl. It was a low, vibrating hum that shook the walls around me, and I felt it deep in my bones. Something was moving behind me. Slowly. A shape, a figure, emerging from the shadows like a nightmare come to life. It took a step forward, and I could hear the sound of its breath, ragged and deep. It was real. I tried to turn my head, but the ropes dug deeper into my skin, preventing me from seeing it fully. All I could make out were shifting shadows, dark, inhuman shapes flickering in and out of existence. There was a flicker of pale skin, a face, barely visible, too distorted to understand. But one thing was clear. The eyes. Dark, hollow, and filled with something ancient, something unrecognizable. The thing moved closer, and I felt its breath on my neck, cold and suffocating. "You've been in the wrong place at the wrong time," it whispered in my ear. "But you won't survive this. You can't survive this." Its voice echoed inside my skull, reverberating through my entire body, making me feel like I was suffocating under its weight. I fought against the ropes again, harder this time, but they wouldn't budge. It was as if the ropes were alive, holding me tighter the more I struggled. Then the figure stepped back. I could hear it moving around me, circling me like a predator, sizing me up. My heart raced, and my mind scrambled to find a way out of this nightmare. "Please, someone help me." The thought was a desperate plea, but I knew no one was coming. No one would ever come. I was utterly alone. The figure stopped directly in front of me, and I felt its presence loom over me, its shadow swallowing the light. I couldn't look up, but I could feel it staring down at me. "You think you'll make it out alive?" it asked, its voice almost pitying. "I've seen what happens to those who get too close. Those who think they can expose us." And then, the worst part, the part that froze me to my core, came. It leaned down, and I felt its cold lips brush against my ear. "Do you want to know the truth?" The coldness of its breath sent a shiver down my spine. My whole body was on fire with fear, but I couldn't look away. It was like a force was pulling me in, making me listen, forcing me to hear it. I didn't want to. I didn't want to know the truth. But the figure's voice was insistent, almost coaxing, drawing me deeper into something I wasn't ready for. "Do you want to know the truth?" it repeated, its voice dripping with an eerie calmness, as if it were offering me something precious, something I could never take back. I opened my mouth to speak, but no words came out. All I could do was nod. I had to know. Something in me told me that I couldn't leave this place without understanding why I was here, why this was happening to me. And then it laughed, low, dark, and knowing. "You've seen us before. You've been looking at us your whole life. But you didn't see us. Not until tonight." Its words hit me like a punch in the gut. My mind struggled to comprehend, but there was a gnawing truth that made everything I thought I knew feel like a lie. I don't understand," I managed to rasp, my throat tight with terror. The figure stepped even closer, its voice now like a whisper, but it felt like it was vibrating inside my skull. "You're a cop. You've seen the corruption, the power, the lies. But you never saw the real power behind it. The ones who pull the strings. The ones who control it all." My breath caught in my chest. The words felt like they were being carved into my very soul. I didn't know if it was the fear, the pain, or the overwhelming weight of the truth, but I understood now. I had seen it, the corruption in the force, the shady dealings, the things that were too dark to touch, but this? This was something different. Something far worse. "We are the ones who control everything. The ones who orchestrate the chaos," it continued, its voice so cold it felt like it was freezing my very bones. "You think it's just politics, just business, just crime. But it's deeper than that. We've been watching, manipulating, controlling everything you know." A knot formed in my stomach as I began to piece it together. The whispers, the strange happenings, the feeling that something had been watching me for weeks, maybe longer. It was all connected. And now I was too far gone, too deep into something I couldn't escape. I swallowed hard, my hands still bound, the ropes digging painfully into my wrists. "Why me?" I choked out. "Why did you bring me here?" The figure chuckled again, a sound that sent a wave of nausea through me. "Because you saw. You saw too much. You were getting too close. And now we have to make sure you can't tell anyone." My heart skipped a beat. The weight of the words hit me like a freight train. I can't leave here. I can't tell anyone. The darkness around me seemed to pulse with a life of its own, and I felt the walls closing in. The air was thick with dread, with the certainty that I was not meant to leave. But in the deepest part of my mind, something snapped. I couldn't give in. Not like this. Not to whatever this thing was. The figure was still standing over me, its presence suffocating. But as I looked into the abyss of its eyes, those empty, hollow eyes, I saw something else. A flicker. A tiny crack in its perfect, terrifying facade. A weakness. It had underestimated me. With every ounce of strength I had left, I broke free from the ropes. My wrists bled, but the pain was nothing compared to the rush of adrenaline that surged through me. I rolled, pushing myself to my feet, feeling the cold floor beneath me. My heart was racing, my body shaking from the effort, but I had to fight. I reached into my pocket, my hands shaking, pulling out the spare cuffs I kept with me for emergencies. As the figure lunged toward me, I slammed the cuffs onto its wrist, the cold metal biting into its skin. It stopped, frozen. The figure hissed, a sound full of fury, its eyes glowing with an unnatural light. "You think this will stop me?" it sneered. But before I could respond, the world around me seemed to flicker. The shadows bent, the air warped, and suddenly, I was back in my patrol car, the city lights outside flickering like nothing had happened. My heart was still pounding, my breath ragged, but everything was normal again. I wasn't sure if it had been real, if I had hallucinated the whole thing. But the picture, the one from earlier, the envelope, it was still in my pocket. I took it out, my hands trembling. And the words were still there, "I'm closer than you think. I survived. I made it out." But whatever it was that had been watching me, it wasn't over. It was just beginning.